Who else? Hey, guys. Here we go. Hey, guys.
Good evening, Ron.
John, how's business at the hotel?
Crazy busy.
Good, good.
Busy, busy. It's busy summer. No. Just not enough help. You don't cook, do you, Ron, by chance?
Let's see. I boil water. What else? That's about it.
You're hired.
You can always use boiling water for something. Good evening, Joe.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thanks. Peter, how are you?
Sure, how are you?
It's Jim. Hi, Jim. There's Carol. Good evening, Carol. Dr. Hayes with us. I do know that Joel will not be joining us this evening, and Giselle was a last minute cancellation. So the only person who's not here just yet, and he may not be, is Tom Berland. I know he's on vacation and wasn't sure whether he was going to be able to, or maybe want to Zoom in or not. But it's 7 o'clock, so we'll give him another minute.
Who wouldn't want to Zoom in on a P&Z meeting while they're on vacation? No.
Dr. Hay did, wanted to.
Yeah,
I'm actually technically on vacation, so
You
There we
are?
go.
as of
Gosh.
tonight, I'm taking off tomorrow. So I just want to get extra credit for that, though.
Yeah, you get extra credit.
and quite frankly, Commissioner Bodenson, you're retired, so you're on perpetual vacation. So you,
Well, I'm so busy I can't get on vacation. I'm gonna try to get away sometime.
okay, well, what I'd like to do is, I guess, start the meeting. We'll assume Tom won't make it. We have 4 items on our agenda. And what I thought I would do is start out with the last item on it, which was the general's residence, but I don't see the the applicant, not the applicant, but the principals here yet. So why don't we start out, if that's okay with everybody? And then we'll finish whatever we happen beyond and defer to that, because I understand there's some members of the public who are watching, and out of respect for them and their time, we'll try and move it up as quickly as we can. Does that make sense? I take this, the deafening silence as an approval.
That's good, Ron.
Sounds good.
Item 1 is a discussion regarding commission meeting platform for the remainder of 2021. Circumstances were a little bit different back when the selectmen sent us that email about deciding what we wanted to do. So I don't think there's much of a discussion or maybe even an option at this point. But is everybody comfortable? I'll just make the suggestion that we continue through the end of the year in the pure Zoom format with no
Yes.
variation from that unless required to do so.
Agreed.
Yeah,
I'll
makes
do
sense.
that.
Yeah.
I think that's
Very-
great.
Okay. I don't think we have to vote or do anything with that. But I will let the select office know tomorrow that we've made that decision. And should things change or be required to change, they'll be in touch with us, but we'll be Zooming ourselves through the rest of the year apparently. And maybe beyond, who knows?
Mr. Chairman,
That's number one.
I would just note that I believe Tim Herbst has joined us.
Okay.
Yes.
Good evening, Counselor. Might be on mute. Tim Herbst, are you with us?
I think Maria is promoting him to a panelist. So he should
Okay.
be joining us in a second.
Hold on. Can everybody see and hear me?
Yes, hello, Counselor, how are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Originally, you were number 4 on our agenda, but since you're here, in respect for your time and possibly members of the public who are tuning in because they saw this on the agenda, we'll pick that up now. So at this point, we will have a discussion. Are you the only one participating?
I will be the only one tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion with Attorney Tim Herbst regarding minor changes in phasing of general's residences, a small cluster development. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Attorney Herbst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Timothy Herbst. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Marino, Zabel, and Schellenberg in Orange, Connecticut, but I am also a member and principal of the general's residence in Madison at Madison LLC, which is the limited liability company that is constructing and developing the 9 units that were approved by the commission in a modified format in May of 2020. What I'd like to do tonight, if I can, is provide you with a brief overview of where we are in the construction, give you an idea of who our buyers are, where we are with the project, and where we hope to go over the next 6 months. I'm pleased to report that 7 of the 9 units that you approved in May of 2020 are under contract and are under construction. I am pleased to report that our first closing will be in the next few weeks. And I am pleased to report that the first closing will be a Madison family that has chosen the general's residence as the location where they seek to retire to. I can tell you that our buyers come from not only Madison, but from all over the country: California, Montana, New York, Fairfield County. So the project has generated interest both in and outside of Madison. What people have told us, what they like about the project is its proximity to the beach, its proximity to downtown, and they have lauded the work of our architect with respect to the open floor plans that we've designed, the first floor master suite, open floor plan living. One thing that I would like to do, if the commission has an appetite to do this, Adam and I would like to give the commission, perhaps in small groups to avoid a quorum, tours of the units that are under construction, specifically the ones that are nearing completion. We want you to see the quality of the work, the quality of the construction. We want you to see what you approved, because I am very confident when you see what you have approved, you're going to be very proud of your vote and proud of this project. Toward that end, as we are getting close to our first closing, what we're going to have happen is a rapid succession of closings thereafter. We expect that 4 to 5 of the units are going to close by the end of the year. Probably 4, maybe 5. We expect that unit 3 will be our first closing. That unit 3 is fronting Post Road closest to Fence Creek. We then expect that unit 6 will close thereafter. That is the unit that faces East Wharf, that is the closest to the Rafferty property. We then expect unit 5 will close. Unit 5 is under contract from a couple who currently reside in the state of Montana. We then expect unit 4 and 7 will be close to each other. Unit 4, the contract purchasers are from Greenwich. Unit 7, the contract purchasers are currently in New Haven, formerly of Woodbridge. We actually will have a Yale Law School professor living at the general's residence at Fence Creek. So they'll have good legal representation, as I like to say. But it's going well, the project's going well. So what I wanted to discuss with you tonight is certain flexibilities that we're trying to achieve while honoring your approvals and the intent and the spirit of what the commission believed to be the most appropriate project. So our contractors, as you know, Waterside Building and Development 2 out of Clinton. They constructed the hammocks in Clinton, which I think many of you are familiar with. And I think when you look at the hammocks and you look at what we're constructing, they are on par at a superior level of workmanship and performance. So what we are looking to do is to obviously landscape those areas where people are moving in, but at the same time recognizing that it is still an active construction site. We still have to build the general's residence replica. We are currently framing unit 1, which is the carriage house. We are close to completing framing unit 2, which is right next to unit 3. So it's still very much an active construction site. So we have to weigh this very difficult balancing act of making sure when we move people into their units that the immediate area around those units is properly landscaped and allows these people to move in and to move in with confidence and to have a good environment, both inside and out. But we also have to navigate the fact that this is an existing and active construction site. So with that being said, what we're going to propose to make sure that we honor and respect the vote of the commission with respect to the landscaping plan that was put forward, we're going to ask that we be given flexibility in achieving that final landscape plan through a phased process, recognizing that we're dealing with a very tight site and we're trying to close units and we're dealing with contract purchasers that have paid in excess of $1 million for their units, but we want to make sure they're comfortable. So I'm going to propose tonight that the commission put upon us a $15,000 landscape bond. We will agree to a bond which will honor and will show good faith in the form of surety what you approved to guarantee that we can navigate an active construction site and have flexibility in meeting landscape demands for immediate contract purchasers, but long-term honoring what we were approved to do. I will also tell you that we are getting feedback from some of the contract purchasers with respect to the landscape plan. So, for example, if you look at unit 3 from the Post Road, there's a very large pine that was part of the landscape plan that is immediately adjacent to, but fronting unit 3. The unit 3 contract purchaser has expressed concern, given the low level of the root structure on that pine, about the danger of that possibly falling on their home during a storm. So we're eliciting this feedback from our buyers, and we might come in at a later date to seek amendments to the landscape plan based upon what we're hearing from the people that will be living there. I do not expect drastic changes to the landscape plan. I expect maybe modifications where we move certain things or adjust certain things. But overall, we believe that the bones of the landscape plan will remain as is because we believe the success of the project in meeting the approval of the commission and also honoring what we heard from the abutting property owners. We believe a well-buffered project is not only good for our abutters, but good for those that are going to be living at the general's residence, and good for a project that really is a focal point as you enter the downtown. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity, I presume you have, but when you are coming down the post road from the 62 exit and you're coming into downtown and you come over that hill, you can really see that project stand out as you're coming into town. So it's very important to us that it is properly landscaped because it jumps out at you, it stands out, and it's going to become a focal point as people come into the downtown. And we want to make sure that we do the best we can to make sure that that landscape plan honors not only your approval, but the spirit and intent of the project overall. I can, at this point, answer any questions you might have. We will agree to a landscape bond to assuage any concerns you might have as we navigate through this active construction site. But we're very proud of the project. We're very proud of the people that are moving to Madison and choosing it as their home and the place where they want to live. And on behalf of Adam and myself, I just want to reiterate our thanks to the commission for approving this project and believing in it. And with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you. I've always been worried about an influx of people from Montana taking over the town. So that's becoming a reality. I won't ask how they got here. But if they watch this tape, welcome. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts to share with Tim? Jim Madison.
Yeah, well, I just have Tim asked for questions. When are you planning on starting the reconstruction of the general's residence main building?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. We hope to start that once we complete the framing of the carriage house, which is Unit 1, which is immediately adjacent to the general's. When you're looking at the general's from the post road, the carriage house is immediately adjacent to that. So the challenge is, and you've probably noticed this when you've driven by the site, because we are still doing site work, we're going to have to dig foundations for the generals. We've just had to dig the foundation for Unit 1, which is the carriage house. We want to get that carriage house framed, because once that carriage house is framed, the last piece of this puzzle is the general's residence, the replica. So we expect that once we can get the carriage house framed and under construction, active construction, we're then going to turn our focus to the general's residence. So I expect that to be sometime in the near future in the fall.
Thanks, Tim.
Anyone else? Ron, is that your hand?
Yeah. So the attorney is suggesting this is a change, but how does it differ from the landscape plan and timing as it exists under the application that we approved? Were they not supposed to do any landscaping until the last building was built? Was there going to be $1 million bond instead of 15,000? I don't understand what the change is and why this is needed.
We're offering it as a commissioner, as a sign of good faith. As I indicated, we're not looking to drastically change the landscape plan, but what I do know is that I watched a meeting of this commission where another application was heard and an attorney made comments about the project that we don't agree with. And I just want you to know that there is good faith on our part. And if we have to put up a landscape bond, we're prepared to do that. That we will properly landscape this project and make sure that approvals are properly carried out. When terms like cesspool are used to describe our project by an attorney, we take exception with that, and we want the commission to know that we're going to do everything in our power to honor the approvals that were granted and to make sure that the landscape plan is carried out accordingly. And if modifications are required, we're going to take that back to the commission and let you know about it before the fact and not after the fact. So the only reason why I suggested that is to show that we are committed to making sure this landscape plan meets your expectation and is carried out with the understanding that it's a difficult active construction site on a tight parcel. And we're trying to navigate that while at the same time make sure that our contract purchasers are satisfied with their immediate area as they close and move into these units.
Yeah, well, you didn't really answer the question. You're coming here for some reason, you're proposing a $15,000 bond. What is it that you are requesting that be changed from the original approval that you couldn't do without coming tonight and offering a $15,000 bond? What is it about the landscaping timing that you're asking permission to do something that you couldn't do unless you came in? I just simply don't understand why you're here.
To provide you with an update of the project, which I think
Well-
you would want.
That isn't common to be done, but okay.
Commissioner, I'm not sure I'm understanding your question.
Well, are you asking for some modification in the existing approval that you were given?
What I'm saying to the commission, and I'll say it again, is that we may have to come back before you and ask for a modification based upon feedback we are receiving
Yeah.
from individuals that are purchasing the units. And as I indicated, specifically as it relates to Unit 3, there is a concern that has been raised, for example, with a very large pine that was part of the landscape plan that is in close proximity to Unit 3.
Yeah,
Unit 3 contract purchasers have expressed concern.
right. You've told us that. And I live in Windermere where we have 86 units. And if we complied with every homeowner who's afraid that a healthy tree was going to fall down, we wouldn't have any trees. So what I'm hearing is very common for buyers to be afraid that a tree next to their house that's healthy, they want to, but that's in the future. So if we do nothing tonight, you're fine because the plan that we approved, you can perform according to what was agreed to in May 2020.
We can do that, but I just want to be candid and forthcoming before the fact that if we encounter conditions during the course of construction that require a modification in some form, I don't want anyone here to be surprised. And I don't want anyone here to find out about it after the fact. I don't want to do something.
Okay, well, that's fine, but I don't think we need $15,000 in advance in order to pave the way for you, but that's just me. I'll let others talk.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else?
I have a
Yeah,
question.
Carol, excuse me, I saw Carol's hand first. Carol?
Oh, thanks. Yes, I think that the agreement stated that you're sharing a plan or a proposal for the design of the general's residence to the Historic District Commission and the Historical Society. Has that happened yet? Because I haven't seen anything and I'm on the Historic District Commission.
Well, I can tell you that our architect, Joe Dickinson, has been in close communication with the Historical Society. As you know, when we originally received our approvals, a discussion before the commission ensued with respect to what items within the house would be surgically extracted and preserved and then reintegrated into the replica. So at this point, I can tell you that we are in active communication with the society. I would expect that the Historic District Commission would be brought into the loop once we start getting beyond the 7 and really focus on the last piece of the puzzle, which is the general's residence. And we're committed to doing that, even though it is not in a historic district per se, or has any historic designation. We're still committed to doing that and making sure that the commission, in addition to the society, who we've been in contact, are part of the process.
So that
Anyone
would
else?
also be before the fall, presumably?
That is our hope. That is our hope. You know, the other thing I have to share with you is that, you know, the challenge that we're dealing with is that we're taking on a very large construction project during a pandemic at a time when lumber at the high point was up 300%, sheetrock's up 40%, and you're also dealing with appliances and fixtures and accoutrements that are in these units that might be delayed because of supply and demand issues that have been caused by the pandemic. So we are trying to also navigate through that. At the same time, you know, trying to get these units closed, trying to get people into their units so we can really turn our focus to the generals and coming up with a plan that that makes sense for the remaining two buyers, whoever they may be, who are going to move into the generals, and to make sure that we integrate much of what was extracted into the reconstruct and to incorporate and involve key stakeholders. So our hope is the fall. But I will tell you that it is not easy to navigate a project of this size during a global pandemic.
Anyone else?
I have a comment and a question. My comment is just I echo the exact same the question that Ron had. I mean, I don't understand if we're talking about, I don't know, something may come up in the future or may not. I found Carol interesting. I didn't realize there was still a negotiation of the general's residence to look like. One of the initial points raised caught my attention, and I've been wondering every time I drive by, why isn't that structure hasn't even begun yet? Because nothing like it was proposed without it. I'm wondering that was left until last. And lastly, if and when you do propose any changes, much like I'm sure Ron was alluding to and may have even said, I would certainly like to see what was originally proposed laid out over what the new proposal or the new request for change is, if you know what I mean.
And Ron, you're specifically talking about the landscape plan, correct?
Ron Bodenson.
Right. I assume
No,
that's
that was
what he's
Joe.
alluding to.
Yeah.
And what I'm concerned about is by accepting a 15,000 bond, it may be some implied permission that they can go change landscaping where they want to, and we find out about it later. So
To the
I just
contrary,
could wait until there's an actual proposed change.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And we are only discussing anticipated landscaping changes, is that correct?
at this point in time, yes.
Okay.
I can, so let me just answer the first part of your question, where you inquired as to why the general's residence is not under construction, but everything else is. First, the general's residence, let me begin with just the general's residence itself is probably the most complex component of the construction because you're building a replica and you're integrating items that were extracted before the demolition into a new structure. That's number one. Number two, the two units approved, 8 and 9 for the generals, are not under contract yet. So if we are in contract with 7 other buyers in a transaction where they are paying consideration for a unit and they are given a closing date as part of that contract, our priority as a company and as developers is to honor that contract and to make sure that those contract purchasers have a unit that is constructed in an agreed time frame that is contractually obligated. So that is priority one. That being said, given how tight the site is, you do need areas of the site for staging commercial equipment for staging deliveries of lumber, of supplies. So if you start building everything at once, when you have perhaps 20 people on the site on any one day, framing, installing windows, installing kitchens, doing electrical, doing plumbing, you are now complicating your ability to effectively deliver the project to completion. So that is why it is not under construction yet. And it is our hope, as I said, once the carriage house is framed, foundation's been poured, framing will begin. Once unit 1 framing is completed and that unit is under active construction, at that point, you're going to have 7 units that are either framed or under active interior construction, which will then allow the ability to focus on 8 and 9.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? I might say, Attorney Herbst, to simplify maybe what was being talked about, you're under no obligation from the planning and zoning's perspective to provide any landscaping before completion and final sign off. And I know many projects where that is really not done at all because of the very issues you raise. I respect the fact you're trying to provide a superior level of service and quality to your buyers. And I think that should be recognized and appreciated, not criticized. But by the same token, I have a concern. If I remember correctly, this tree was an important feature that was going to be retained. And I think recognized by both the public and the commission. And to think that, that's number one. Number two is to recognize that while I appreciate this homeowner's thoughts, this tree is in a common area, which he does not own or control or will not own or control. So he does not have, he might be the closest one to it, but it is not his to, in my mind, unilaterally decide that it should come down. And perhaps the other owners should be consulted and have decided that collectively before an attempt is made to do that. But beyond that, I think as well, residents, particularly those on the north side, would like to have and I realize we don't have an application before us and you just talked that it may happen and it was a thought. So I'm not saying that that's what's being requested. But I think some due diligence has to be done along all those lines before that the removal of that tree can be considered, and possibly even by an insurance company making a very educated statement as to why it must come down. I don't know how anybody else feels. Anybody have a comment about that? Follow up?
I think it's a good point, Ron.
Yeah, I think a very good point, especially with some input from the immediate surrounding neighbors.
So, it is a big tree, but it's a specimen type tree, I think. And I think there were two, if I remember, the one right out in front of the general's residence, a deciduous tree of some sort, and this evergreen. So just something to keep in mind, Counselor, as you move forward with your plans.
Understood.
We have nothing to vote on, nothing to approve. As far as the bond is concerned, we appreciate the offer. I might suggest if the commission thinks it makes sense to possibly have a discussion with John Guskowski, the acting town planner, and share with him some details and let John use his expertise to report back to us as to whether that would be an appropriate step or a necessary step or not. Does that make sense, Commission?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So John, Attorney Herbst, if you want to pursue that, that would be the way to do it. So,
I did have a preliminary conversation with John earlier this week on these issues. So
Okay.
everything I'm saying to the commission tonight, I did discuss with John in advance.
well, the nuts, the bolts, and the necessity, I think, as it pointed out, what's the reason for it, other than good faith, which I think should be appreciated, not criticized. But follow up with that. I think we got a couple of calls at town hall today about maybe seeking some detail when they saw this was on the agenda. And this isn't a public hearing. We're not acting on an application. I think it's fairly clear that we're not for anything. But if there are any members of the public who have a question or wish to make a statement, I certainly would entertain it. I think it would be appropriate, maybe good feedback for Attorney Herbst. So, Maria, is there anybody in the public raising their hand?
Yes, I do have one. Where did they go? Oh, they just put it down.
They didn't raise their hand?
They
Okay,
did have it raised and they put it down.
okay. So I think, does anybody else have anything? Attorney Herbst, do you have?
They,
Whoop.
they keep putting it up and down. Hold on, let me see if they yes. Okay.
Okay, what?
I do have someone who would like to ask a
Yeah.
question.
I'm here.
Okay.
It's Jerry Birnbaum, 9 Bushnell Lane. And I'd like to comment about some of the landscaping. I went by the East Wharf the other day and I saw a lot of brown leaves around the base of the horse chestnuts out in the front, 2 horse chestnuts that I grew up with. And to the west side of the stone wall, which is not the property belonging to the Hart residence. And then I talked with Mrs. Rafferty, and she said that somebody had been in there and they had sprayed, okay? And it certainly was a heavy duty Roundup or something, but the landscapers must know that those things have to be posted along the boundaries whenever they use that. Okay, so I'd appreciate if you start doing that when you do any of that kind of weed killing out in the front. I know Japanese knotweed is a tough one to get rid of, but I think you really should, put a posting along the places where you've sprayed. So thank you with that.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Mr. Berman. Thank you. Was that the hand that was going up and down, Maria? Or is there someone else?
Yes, nope, that was it.
So if we have nothing else, I can say nothing myself other than thank you, Attorney Herbst, and we look forward to the project moving along and the general residence itself taking shape.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as I indicated earlier, if the commission would like tours of the site in small groups to show you what's going on at the site, we'd be more than willing to do that for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ron, I since Tim offered that, I would like to, I'd like to do that at some point.
Okay.
Be-
What's the best way to coordinate it? Through Maria? Maria, would you mind doing that?
I
No,
would think-
absolutely.
yeah.
I can do it.
Okay.
If I would say if individual commissioners are interested, that they should just quick email Maria so she can be the conduit with Attorney Herbst.
And that way we'll have the documentation too for FOI and everything else.
Mhm.
So that's a good idea. Thank you for that offer. I think that's a great idea. Also may be an opportune time when you're there to kind of put a little perspective on for us to get a little perspective on the landscaping situation for Unit 3 and what you're dealing with. So that's a good thing. All right. Anything else from anybody on that item? Carol, did you raise your hand?
I have a question, if I may. Hey, Tim, are there any unresolved neighbor complaints with the construction and with the process that we should be aware of?
I can tell you that last week, Adam Greenberg and I were at the site, and Adam had a conversation with Dr. Rafferty and his wife about issues concerning runoff at the rear of the property. And my understanding is that Adam contacted our general contractor, John Giannotti, to work to address those issues concerning the rear of the property. We have received no, as I understand, no serious or formal complaints that have been levied with the town that have been communicated to us. Clearly, if we get a complaint, we want to deal with it. We want to be good neighbors. We don't want people to be anxious, upset, disheartened in any way. So when we hear something, our position is to act on it. At this point in time, other than the conversation that Adam had with Dr. Rafferty, I am aware of no other neighbor complaints that have been brought to my attention or to Adam's attention.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, again, Attorney Herbst, thank you for your time and the information. We appreciate what you're doing to work with the neighborhood and work with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Have a nice evening.
You too, and good evening, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is a discussion regarding the timeline of recreational marijuana as it relates to zoning. I don't know, first, John, do you have anything to share with us as to what may be going on up in the Hartford world or in the?
Yeah, well, so there was a webinar that was held last Friday that was co-hosted by the Connecticut Association of Planners and the Connecticut Association of Zoning Enforcement Officials, at which representatives of and a law firm that had dealt with both recreational marijuana in Massachusetts and Connecticut spoke, as well as a representative of the governor's office who helped to draft that legislation. Address the recent laws and the implications at the local level. And it really seems like there are sort of two fundamental decisions that a town needs to make. One is at a zoning level, which is to say, is the community interested in entertaining the possibility of permitting a recreational marijuana retail operation or a producer? Will you allow that by zoning? And then by ordinance, does town meeting wish to regulate the use of it in terms of smoking in public or the sort of public health and safety ordinances surrounding that topic? From a zoning perspective, obviously that is your bailiwick. The commission is broadly empowered to sort of do what they want. It could be as simple as a prohibition in the zoning regulations, one of your prohibited uses in any district. If you choose to do nothing, it is likely that should a recreational commercial retail vendor apply to come to town, any place that retail is currently allowed, chances are recreational marijuana would be allowed as a standard retail use. But that, again, is only if you do nothing to prohibit, regulate, or clarify the use as being different from some other retail use. But if the sentiment of the commission is that you would just prefer not to have the retail in town, it's as simple as a text change to clarify the commission's position. But they were also quite clear that nothing is happening tomorrow. There is a whole commission that needs to be set up that deals with standards for granting licenses. And there's a whole social justice element of this commission that has to be put together. So it's likely to be, 9 months to a year before the licenses even start being applied for. So nothing is immediately pending, but some action is probably required by this board should they wish to have some level of control of the issue.
Okay. Thank you very much, John, for the update. The other aspect of it that occurs to me is cultivation. And I'm I'm not sure whether we would have any jurisdiction over cultivation of a particular crop. You know, if Mr. Cole decided he was going to plant cucumbers instead of corn, whether we could outlaw cucumbers so he keeps us supplied with his corn. But that is another aspect of the marijuana legalization that we have to give some thought to. But beyond that, we have to recognize the selectmen put together an ad hoc committee to deal with the entire subject, and our representative on it is Peter Roos. Peter, do you have anything you want to add or give us an update about? You're on mute, Peter.
No, I'm doing it. I'm Ron. I'm not on that committee. I'm on affordable housing.
Oh, well, we got you onto affordable marijuana. You're right. They haven't formed that group yet. I'm in the next item on the agenda. Okay.
I don't recall raising my hand for that one.
No, you're absolutely right. And, but they are going to be putting one together and we will have a representative. I'm sorry I misspoke. So I don't think there's anything we need to do at this point. I think we agree that we do want to have, John says we have the right to, and indeed we do to decide, but I think we want to have and should have community and local input to reach that conclusion. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you, John. And sorry, Peter.
No worries.
Next is Peter's Alley. It's discussion regarding Public Act 2129, the affordable housing provisions. And after John gives us an update on that, we'll ask for Peter's update.
So for accessory apartments and affordable, so PA 2129 did make some changes to the state zoning enabling statute, but actually very few that related directly to a municipality's responsibility for affordable housing. It did clarify some of the requirements of the statutory affordable housing plans that municipalities have to write every 5 years. That law was passed back in 2017. And that's a 5-year plan. The first 5-year cycle is coming up basically at the end of this current fiscal year. So July of 2022. Each town's first affordable housing plan is due. The statute did clarify that following this first one, a municipality can update their affordable housing plan along the same cycle as they update their plan of conservation and development. So you would be able to, adopt an affordable housing plan at the time you do your next POCD, and then, an update 5 years hence, because an affordable housing is on a 5-year cycle, POCD is on a 10-year cycle. That was really the only explicitly affordable housing change that the statute or that the latest law affected, with the exception of strengthening the language somewhat about a community's responsibility to affirmatively advance the topic of fair housing in their community. It was a sort of a mild language tweak that sort of said towns really ought to do it instead of towns ought to do it. And then the other change that is sort of gaining a lot of attention is the accessory apartments regulation, which made basically as of right across the state in every municipality and every residential district where single family residences are allowed as of right, an accessory apartment also allowable as of right at an administrative level using basically the same standards as a single family residence. So, no increased setback, no increased coverage, no, change in height. Anything that applies to a single family residence also applies to an accessory apartment. The big caveat with that, and I should say that takes effect as of January 2023. And that the provision of the statute says basically if there is a conflict in between a local regulation and this state statute as of January 1st, 2023, the state statute will govern. And now the big caveat to that is the town is allowed an opt-out. So if this commission, planning and zoning, votes with a 2/3 majority following a public hearing that they do not want to be subject to those new accessory apartment regulations, they can opt out. And then they also have to get a concurrent 2/3 vote from the chief legislative body in the town. I believe the Board of Selectmen would also have to vote on a 2/3 majority to opt out after a public hearing. And so this is not, and the opt-out is not necessarily all or nothing. This commission could say, we agree with 90% of those statutory changes, but wish to, keep in place, let's say a requirement of ownership occupancy of either the primary or secondary unit, for instance. The statute gets rid of that provision. So you would go through the process of essentially opting out, keeping 90% of the regulations and changing your regulations to retain that ownership requirement, for instance. So you have basically between now and January of 2023 to decide if the town wants to modify its regulations to be in compliance with the statute in whole or in part. And that's that. And then I'll turn it over to Peter.
I had a quick question on that, John. Didn't they also say that accessory dwellings now could be up to 1,000 feet or no more than 30% of the size of the main dwelling?
That's correct.
And I think we're at 800 in town right now, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's right.
Right.
So that's something we'll have to consider at some point in time.
But it's 1,000 square feet or 30%, whichever is smaller.
Whichever is smaller, correct.
Yeah, and it also applies to both attached and detached. So someone could build a cottage in their backyard, for instance. It doesn't have to be, an attic or a basement or an addition. It could be a separate structure.
I would just add, if people are interested in the bills, Desegregate CT, whether you agree with it or not, does have a pretty good website that talks about it in depth, some of these legislations that have been coming down. So it's worth a look. I go there to sort of get a perspective.
Is anything happening with the ad hoc committee, Peter?
Well, I would say it is, it's pretty slow right now. We formed it in March, and that's when we had the 3 permanent members come on who were appointed by the town. And of course, there were 4 of us that started probably in February when Dave was still around. The big change that's happened is that the SCROG, South Central Regional Council of Governments, they're retaining consultants to help the towns write their plan. They are also going to be helping us write a survey to try to gain some knowledge as to what people actually know about affordable housing or frankly don't know. We saw the survey the other day. I would say it was disappointing. It asked a lot of questions that people probably would never know the answer to. And I don't think it got to the whys and wheres as, why do you think affordable housing is good or bad? Would you support affordable housing? Do you live in the town that you work in? Can you afford to live in the town you work in? Yada, yada, yada. Those kind of sort of base level questions that you really need to find out and understand. So, we're waiting to see what happens, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the committee perhaps go on a tangent to say, we'll use the SCROG or whatever the acronym is for their writing capacity, but we may do our own survey that gets more to the particulars of Madison. We had a discussion about that today, and it's sort of a to be determined. We don't want to lose what we get from the South Central, because that's going to be very helpful. They've written these things, and the consultants have done it before, but frankly, the survey was somewhat disappointing. Meanwhile, we're working on lists of people that we want to talk to once the survey has gone out, just to talk about, some of the larger employers in town, what you think about affordable housing, et cetera. Just reading a lot. We also had an opportunity, I think everybody knows here because you all approved it, the Wellington will be developed here in Madison on the east side of town near Windermere, hopefully next year. But we had a chance to go through one of their other properties in Centerbrook, which is called Spencer's Corner. And we did that last Friday. And I have to tell you, very impressive looking building. Commercial on the bottom, and then they went up into lofts for the top second floors. And we had a chance to tour two of them. And, you know, if you have an impression that affordable housing is something that's dilapidated and run down and not very nice, you misinformed based on what we saw at Spencer's Corner. Very nicely done. It's another Hope Partnership project. It's what affordable housing can be if it's done right. So that's kind of where we are. It's moved slowly, and there's only so much we can do, but we are going to be working with the South Central, and hopefully they'll have some good things to offer. And when you think about that region, it's Milford to the west, it's Meriden to the north, and then we're on the eastern end of it, and then it's everybody in between, including New Haven. So, and I would tell you that we're not behind the other towns. In fact, I've been on a few of these meetings where I think we were a bit more informed as to what's going on and chomping much more at the bit than some of the other towns are. So, you know, when we have to get rolling, we will get rolling. But right now, it's been sort of a slow initiation.
Crawl before you walk.
Pardon me?
Crawl before you walk type of situation.
Indeed.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a couple of questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Peter, have they given you a sense of what the ultimate sort of format and product is going to be relative to each municipality participating?
Yeah, John, that's a great question. And we talked about that today. We just don't know. You've probably seen some of the individual plans out there, like for Essex and others. That's what I'm envisioning we would get.
I wrote the Essex one.
Okay, well then I might tell you it was also quite brilliant, but I won't. But it was very informative, and it leads people down a path as to why you need affordable housing. That's what has to be done here in that plan finally. But I don't know the answer to your question. That's one of the big questions we have right now is what are you actually going to be doing?
Okay. Yeah. Well, so yeah, I'm curious to see how that unfolds. I know the region just to your east, the Lower Connecticut River Valley Council of Governments, RiverCog, is doing a similar regional approach. They're kind of writing a regional assessment and a regional best practices guide. And then each municipality participating will have essentially an appendix to the plan.
That's what we've heard too.
With some recommendations, but I haven't really seen that play out and don't want to get too far into this process. If we get into January, February, it might be a scramble, and I'd prefer not to have that.
Yeah, so would we.
Anybody else? Well, thanks, Peter, for the update.
Sure.
That concludes our agenda. We don't have any items to work on. Remarks, comments. I only have two things to point out or to mention. Number one is a group has conducted interviews with a replacement for Dave Anderson. They interviewed a pool of candidates and recommended candidates to not the Board of Selectmen, but what would you say, John, a committee of selectmen to conduct interviews with them. And if they happen to believe one is capable of filling Dave's shoes, which is a difficult task, I admit, that will be something negotiated and then presented to the Board of Selectmen for a decision. So that process is going on, and we'll see what comes out the other end. It will become public when it gets to the Board of Selectmen for their discussion and decision to the full BOS. So that's number one. The second thing is, I believe the night before last, or Monday, the Board of Selectmen voted to pursue a proposal from Our Lady of Mercy School to sell the property to that entity. They had gotten 3 bids. You've probably seen the coverage of this. The other 2 are for residential type development. And the bids they submitted were in the low hundreds of thousands of dollars. The bid they got from Our Lady of Mercy was $2.25 or $250,000, $2,250,000 or so. So they've decided to move that forward, which means from our perspective, we will probably see at our meeting in 2 weeks what is called an 824 review from the Board of Selectmen to get our acknowledgement, approval. Is probably a better word because it's not like an application. But that is part of the process. John, maybe it'd be best at this stage to do a little explanation of what an 824 referral is.
Sure. So an 824 refers to the statute, section 8-24, where basically any municipal acquisition, disposition of land, whether that be a purchase, a sale, an acquisition of interest, must be referred to the Planning Commission, or in this case, the Planning and Zoning Commission, for their assessment of the proposed acquisition or disposition of land's compliance and harmony with the Plan of Conservation and Development. And so it's up to this body to sort of review and say, okay, does in this case, the sale of that municipal property, that former school, does that align with goals that you've established in the POCD? And you would issue a formal statement to inform the town meeting.
So that's what it is. So we won't be seeing an application from the school. It will be a referral from the Board of Selectmen and to do exactly what John just described and outlined. So we can look forward to seeing that again, I assume in 2 weeks. And with that, I don't think I have anything else. John, do you have anything you want to comment on?
I do not at this time, no. Thanks, Ron.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question or something they'd like to comment on?
Quickly, Mike.
Yes, Ron.
I just thought throw out, there's an article a month or two ago that was discussing the marijuana issue in the state of Connecticut, and they mentioned other states. And I don't know if it was Massachusetts, but they talked about what the towns in another state did, and not to prejudge Connecticut, but it was stunning that I thought it was like 155 out of the 160 towns banned the sale of retail marijuana. I thought that, now that may be outdated. Maybe that happened 10 or 15 years ago, but it was pretty amazing, how it skewed. And I just thought I'd mention that's the history. And I think it was Massachusetts. John may know better than me.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anything else from anyone? Well, with that, then I would entertain a motion for someone to adjourn. Anybody willing to make that motion?
Make the motion.
Not- I'm sure there's no discussion. Would anybody like to second?
I'll second.
Everybody, I'll give Joe Banowski credit.
Thanks,
All in
Joe.
favor? Aye.
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 Obviously, nobody's opposed. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a good evening, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Thank you.
I-